Queen Camilla didn't argue. She didn't demand an explanation. The moment the palace confirmed shocking change to the royal line, she pushed back her chair and walked out, while King Charles remained completely silent. Before we reveal what forced Camilla to walk out, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from today? The room was already tense before anyone spoke. King Charles sat at the head of the table, William only a few seats away, while Camilla held a palace briefing folder across her lap. Catherine was there too, watching quietly as senior officials prepared to explain changes connected to the future of the crown. Then the announcement began. At first, Camilla barely reacted. The language was careful, formal enough to sound almost harmless. But as the details unfolded, the meaning became impossible to ignore. The proposed changes would draw a new boundary around the monarchy after Charles's reign, separating his current household from the structure William would one day inherit. And Camilla understood immediately where that left her. She would remain queen beside Charles. Her present title was not being taken away. Her public duties would continue. But the future was another matter. Camilla slowly turned toward Charles. She seemed to be waiting for something, a correction, an objection, perhaps even a single sentence telling the room that the decision had gone too far. Charles said nothing. That silence changed everything. Camilla closed the folder in her hands. She pushed back her chair and stood. Nobody tried to stop her. William remained completely still. Catherine lowered her eyes, and Charles watched as his wife walked toward the doors without saying another word. When they closed behind her, the empty chair suddenly became the most powerful thing in the room. Because Camilla hadn't simply walked away from a meeting. She had walked out after realizing that the monarchy being prepared for William might have a very different place for her than the monarchy Charles had built around her. But William wasn't watching the empty chair. His attention had shifted to a second page, still resting beneath the palace papers. A page Camilla had not yet seen. And what was written there would reveal that the changes went much further than anyone had told her. For several seconds after Camilla left, nobody moved. Then the senior official lifted the second page. This document was different. The first announcement had explained what Camilla might lose. The second revealed where those responsibilities could go next. And two names immediately changed the atmosphere. Catherine and Princess Anne. Under the proposed transition, responsibilities connected to the future royal household would increasingly move toward the people expected to remain central when William eventually became king. Catherine would stand beside him and would provide experience and stability during the transition. Camilla's role belonged firmly to Charles's reign. That distinction was everything. Charles read the page again, slower this time. He could protect Camilla's position while he remained king, but he could not automatically guarantee that her influence, advisors, or private arrangements would continue under his son. William finally broke the silence. He said the issue was not about removing Camilla from the present. It was about preventing one reign from deciding the structure of the next. Charles looked directly at him. There was no anger in William's voice. That almost made it worse. Because this didn't sound like an emotional reaction. It sounded prepared. The empty chair beside Charles now carried a different meaning. Camilla had walked out, believing she had just heard the full decision. She hadn't. The second page suggested something much larger was happening behind palace doors. A gradual transfer of future responsibility away from Camilla and toward the royals William trusted to help shape his reign. But Charles suddenly realized something else. A plan this detailed could not have been created overnight. Someone had been examining Camilla's future position long before she entered that room. And the reason went back several weeks, to a private Windsor meeting, one seemingly harmless proposal, and a single clause William had read twice before asking a question that changed everything. 6 weeks earlier, nobody believed that meeting would end in a royal crisis. Camilla had arrived at Windsor with what appeared to be a simple proposal. A continuity arrangement designed to keep her charities, staff, and ceremonial commitments stable whenever Charles's reign eventually ended. On paper, it sounded practical. Then William reached one clause and stopped. The provision suggested that selected advisors connected to Camilla's office could retain temporary access during the transition into the next reign. William read it once. then again, and finally looked across the table at Camilla. Why? He asked. Should people appointed under his father's household automatically remain inside the royal structure after he became king? Camilla immediately defended the proposal. To her, this wasn't an attempt to preserve power. It was about preventing confusion during one of the most sensitive moments the monarchy could face. William saw something different. Continuity could easily become influence, and temporary access could quietly become expectation. Charles stepped in, reminding his son that Camilla had spent years building charities and carrying royal responsibilities. She deserved, he argued, a dignified transition rather than having everything disappear the moment the crown changed hands. William didn't challenge her service. He challenged the assumption behind it. His future reign, he believed, could not begin already tied to arrangements he had never approved. The room became noticeably quieter. Camilla pushed the document toward him and insisted that the monarchy could not simply erase years of work every time the throne changed hands. William closed the folder. His answer was calm, but final. When his reign began, the decisions surrounding it would have to be his. The meeting ended without an argument. No one walked out. No door slammed. But something far more important had changed. William left Windsor with a question he could no longer ignore. If this one arrangement was expected to survive his father's reign, Walls had already been promised. And instead of asking Camilla for another explanation, William quietly began looking for the answer himself. William didn't confront Camilla again. Instead, he started asking questions. Quietly, he wanted to know which advisors, privileges, charitable arrangements, and private commitments connected to Charles's household could potentially survive into the next reign. What began with one clause was becoming something much bigger. For William, the concern was no longer simply about Camilla. It was about Catherine, George, Charlotte, Louis, and the monarchy they would eventually inherit. Every arrangement carried the same question. Who gets to decide what survives when the crown changes hands? William's position hardened. He would respect every decision Charles made during his own reign. He would not interfere with Camilla's current title, duties, or place beside the king. But the future was different. William believed that no private promise should automatically become an obligation for the next monarch. And that distinction created a line he was no longer willing to cross. Catherine understood his concern, but she also warned him about something more personal. If this became a campaign against Camilla rather than a restructuring of the future crown, the family could fracture before William ever reached the throne. William knew she was right. That was why he needed someone whose involvement could not easily be dismissed as personal resentment. Someone Charles trusted. Someone whose loyalty to the monarchy had rarely been questioned. Princess Anne. When was privately shown the concerns William had identified, she didn't immediately take his side. She studied the arrangements carefully and asked what would happen if two different centers of influence remained inside the palace during a future transition. William gave her the answer he feared most: conflicting loyalties, and went silent. Then she made it clear that continuity should protect the crown, not preserve anyone's personal network indefinitely. That changed everything. William was no longer standing alone. And once Charles learned that and had begun taking the concern seriously, the dispute became much harder to dismiss as tension between his stepson and his stepmother. But Camilla knew none of this yet. Not until one small detail reached her office and revealed that William's quiet questions had already become a coordinated plan. Camilla discovered the first sign almost by accident. A briefing note reached her office containing references to a wider review of future royal responsibilities. Her name wasn't highlighted. It didn't need to be. She immediately understood what William had been doing. The questions from Windsor had become something more organized, and Princess Anne was now involved. That changed the balance completely. Camilla could dismiss William's concerns as the caution of a future king determined to control his own reign. But Anne was different. Her reputation had been built around duty, discipline, and loyalty to the institution. If Anne believed there was a problem, Charles would have to listen. Behind closed doors, Anne's warning was simple: The transition between two monarchs could not leave competing centers of influence inside the palace. There could be continuity, there could be dignity, but there could not be confusion about where authority rested. For William, those words strengthened everything he had been arguing. For Camilla, they felt like the walls were quietly closing around her. She began asking her own questions. How long had the review been happening? Who had authorized it? And most importantly, how much did Charles know? The answer came sooner than she expected. Camilla discovered that Charles had already been briefed on several of William's concerns. He hadn't agreed to everything. In fact, he had apparently pushed back against parts he believed went too far. But he had known enough to understand where the process was heading, and he hadn't warned her. That was the betrayal Camilla couldn't ignore. William questioning her future influence was one thing, and supporting tighter boundaries was another. But Charles allowing those discussions to continue while Camilla remained unaware made the conflict deeply personal. That evening, a message reached the king. Camilla wanted to see him privately. No advisors, no palace officials, no William, just Charles. When the king entered her room, Camilla was standing beside the table with the briefing papers already open. She didn't ask what William wanted. She didn't ask what and had recommended. She looked directly at her husband and asked the only question that mattered now. How long have you known? Charles hesitated, and before he could say a word, Camilla already had her answer. For several seconds, Charles said nothing. That silence hurt more than any explanation. Camilla placed the papers on the table and asked why he had allowed her to remain unaware while William and questioned what would survive beyond his reign. Charles tried to explain. He hadn't approved everything William wanted. He had pushed back against proposals he believed would humiliate her. But he also couldn't ignore his son's central argument. The next monarch had the right to decide what his own reign would inherit. Camilla wasn't satisfied. This wasn't only about royal authority anymore. It was about trust. She had spent years standing beside Charles through criticism, public pressure, and endless comparisons. Yet when her future inside the monarchy came under discussion, her own husband had chosen silence. Charles stepped closer. He told her the truth was more complicated. If he rejected William completely, he risked turning a disagreement over transition planning into a direct confrontation between the king and his heir. If he accepted William's position, Camilla would see it as betrayal. For the first time, Charles admitted what frightened him most. He might not be able to protect both his marriage and the smooth succession of the crown. Camilla stared at him. Then she asked the question he had been avoiding. If protecting her and protecting William's future became impossible at the same time, which one would he choose? Charles didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. Camilla looked away. The hesitation had told her everything. But Charles finally revealed something she hadn't expected. William's restructuring was not complete. The final implementation still required the king's approval. Nothing became permanent without Charles. For the first time since discovering the review, Camilla saw one remaining possibility. Charles still controlled the final decision, but that also meant the crisis was about to become much more dangerous. Because before signing anything, the king intended to confront William himself. And when Charles discovered how far his son had already planned for the next reign, he realized Camilla's future role was only one piece of a much larger transformation. Charles expected an argument. What he found was a strategy. William was waiting in a private palace office with several documents spread across the desk. Future appointments, advisory roles, household responsibilities, and arrangements that could potentially survive beyond Charles's reign. The king looked through them slowly. This was no longer about one clause. William had been drawing a boundary around an entire future reign. Charles finally asked whether this was truly about protecting the crown, or whether old resentment toward Camilla had found a more respectable name. William's expression hardened. He knew exactly what his father meant, but he refused to retreat. He told Charles that George, Charlotte, and Louis would one day inherit responsibilities of their own. They should not enter that future surrounded by private commitments created before they were old enough to understand them. Charles understood the argument. What disturbed him was how final it sounded. Then Catherine's concerns entered the conversation. She supported William's right to protect the next reign, but she had challenged the way Camilla was being treated. A constitutional boundary, Catherine had warned, could still become personal humiliation if handled carelessly. That forced William to confront an uncomfortable truth. He could believe the decision was necessary and still admit the process had become cruel. Charles turned another page. There it was. The proposed transfer of several future responsibilities toward Catherine and Anne. He read the names twice. Then he noticed something else. A blank space remained at the bottom of the final order. William had prepared the future and had strengthened the argument. Officials had built the structure, but none of it could become final without one thing: the king's signature. Charles looked at his son. For all William's planning, the last decision still belonged to him. The king carried the document back to his private office and closed the door. Across the room stood the chair Camilla normally occupied during their evening briefings. It was empty. Charles placed the order on his desk. Beside it, he placed a fountain pen. And suddenly the future of the monarchy had been reduced to one impossible choice. Whether the king was willing to sign the document that could protect his son's reign while breaking his wife's trust. For nearly 3 hours, the document remained unsigned. Charles sat alone. No advisors entered. No officials interrupted. Across the room, Camilla's empty chair remained exactly where she had left it. The king looked at the final page again. If he refused to sign, he could protect Camilla from the restructuring, but risk a deeper confrontation with William over the future crown. If he signed, William would be free to shape his own reign. But Camilla would know that when the choice finally came, Charles had chosen the future of the monarchy over her influence within it. He reached for the pen, then stopped. For Charles, this wasn't a choice between right and wrong. It was a choice between two relationships he could no longer protect at the same time. Finally, he signed. The decision was quiet. Its consequences were not. Within hours, transition documents connected to Camilla's office began moving elsewhere. Future responsibilities were redirected toward the structure William had been preparing. When Camilla learned that Charles had signed, she didn't confront him again. She made a different decision. That evening, the queen was expected to appear beside the king at a royal reception. Her place had already been prepared. But when Charles entered the room, Camilla wasn't beside him. Catherine wasn't there to replace her either. The chair remained empty. Guests noticed. Staff noticed. And soon, cameras noticed. The palace could explain a document. Explaining an empty chair was much harder, because absence creates its own story. Within hours, questions began spreading about why Camilla had failed to appear and whether the tension inside the palace had become something far more serious. Charles had believed his signature would end the uncertainty. Instead, it made the conflict visible. And William understood immediately how dangerous that could become. Camilla was no longer simply the woman who had lost an argument behind closed doors. She could now become the woman the public believed had been pushed aside. The palace thought the hardest decision had already been made. It hadn't, because late that night, William received an unexpected message from Camilla. She wanted to meet him the following morning, alone. And this time, Camilla wasn't asking him to give her power back. She had something else in mind. Camilla was already waiting when William entered the room. No Charles, no Catherine, no Anne. And this time, no documents stood between them. William expected Camilla to demand that the decision be reversed. She didn't. Instead, she asked him one question: why protecting his future required humiliating her in the present. William remained silent for a moment. Then, for the first time, he admitted something important. The boundary around his future reign was necessary. The way it had been handled was not. Camilla had served beside Charles for years. Whatever William believed about future influence, forcing her to discover the decision in a room full of officials had turned constitutional planning into something painfully personal. Camilla hadn't expected him to admit that, and the admission changed the conversation. She told William she understood one truth now. When he became king, his reign would belong to him. But she refused to let decades of royal service end with an image of an empty chair and whispers that she had simply been pushed aside. Then Camilla made her offer. She would voluntarily surrender any disputed influence intended to continue beyond Charles's reign. No automatic authority, no inherited access for her private advisors, no expectation that William preserve arrangements he had never approved. But in return, the palace would make one distinction clear. Camilla was choosing to step away from future influence. She was not being erased from the present. William studied her carefully. The outcome was almost identical to the one he had wanted, but its meaning was completely different. One version ended with Camilla defeated. The other allowed her to leave the future crown on her own terms. William agreed. A revised declaration would recognize her service during Charles's reign, while making clear that the next reign would begin under William's authority alone. Camilla looked toward the window. The world had already seen her walk away. Now came the harder part. She would have to return. And when the palace doors opened again, Camilla wouldn't be standing beside Charles. She would be standing beside the man everyone believed had forced her out. The palace doors opened again the following afternoon. And this time, Camilla didn't walk away. She stepped forward carrying the revised declaration, with William beside her. Charles waited inside. The symbolism was impossible to miss. Only hours earlier, Camilla's empty chair had suggested a family being pulled apart. Now she was returning under completely different terms. Not because the original disagreement had disappeared, but because everyone finally understood where the boundary would be drawn. Camilla would remain queen throughout Charles's reign. Her title remained. Her charities remained. Her public duties remained. But when William eventually inherited the crown, no private office, advisor, privilege, or arrangement connected to Camilla would automatically follow him into the next reign. The future would belong to the future king. Camilla had accepted that. William, however, had accepted something too. Protecting the crown did not require humiliating the woman standing beside his father. When Camilla finally reached Charles, the king didn't immediately defend his decision. He apologized for his silence. The signature, he explained, had been about protecting the succession. But allowing Camilla to discover what was happening without warning had damaged something no royal document could repair. Trust. Camilla listened. Then she reached for Charles's hand. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was enough to walk back inside beside him. At the next private royal meeting, Camilla returned to the same chair that had started the entire crisis. This time, no transition documents waited in front of her. Catherine and now held responsibilities connected to the future structure. William looked across the table. Camilla met his eyes. Neither smiled. They simply exchanged a restrained nod. The message was clear. Camilla had not lost her place beside Charles. William had not taken his father's crown, but something inside the monarchy had changed permanently. The palace had finally drawn a line between the reign Charles was still living and the reign William was preparing to inherit. The chair Camilla once left behind was no longer empty, but the power attached to it would never be the same again.